And welcome to another edition of Kansas City Huddle. Lively crowd on hand tonight for former Chiefs lineman and Super Bowl champion Mitch Schwartz. Thanks for coming in, sir. We appreciate your time.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. I wish we were in better circumstances to talk about the Chiefs 6-6 with only a few games to go. Not a whole lot of room left for error for these guys. So, in your opinion, what's been working and what hasn't been working so well so far this season?
Yeah, I think what's not been working offensively is an identity. You know, what I wanted to see is a little less shotgun, a little more under center, both in terms of the run game and the play action. We're really effective when we get under center and run the ball. Kareem's great at it, Isaiah's great at it, and just hasn't been quite as part of the program as I wish. And then from there, you get the easy play actions. You know, we see right now the league is shifting. A lot of the top offenses under center, using the play action, finding the intermediate passing game, which I feel like is just non-existent in Kansas City. So offensively, I just feel like we're still trying to figure it out. Obviously, guys getting hurt, adding guys back midway through the season, trying to figure it out, roles for everybody. So I understand it, but put into a corner here where things have got to switch, and they got to switch pretty quickly. And then defensively, I think it just, you know, the lack of pass rush, defensive line depth. I mean, Chris, as great as he is, probably shouldn't be playing 85% of the snaps every single week. You're going to wear a guy down, especially at his age with, you know, how much he's done here. And guys just aren't winning one-on-ones. And so you're reliant on Spags to make the perfect call every single time, which is just, you know, unreasonable to expect of a defensive coordinator. So I would say those are the things going wrong. I'd say the things going right. The team is still playing really hard, still fighting. You know, they all care. They've got great leadership, you know, from the head coach on down to the players. So I think there's still optimism to be had, given the history here and how hard the guys are still fighting.
Yeah, we hear Coach Reed talk about all the time that they're going to run the ball and they run under center, and then it seems like during the game they abandon it for a while for reasons you probably know better than we. But as fans, I know it's frustrating for fans. As a former offensive lineman sitting at home watching, when you see them abandon the run game, especially from under center, does that frustrate you?
It is frustrating. You know, Coach Reed's always going to lean a little bit pass heavy. I understand that. I think we all understand at this point. We just like to see those numbers get a little bit closer. And so, you know, a couple weeks ago against Indianapolis, you see 37 runs, and oh my God, it's so exciting. Well, that's out of 93 plays. So you look at the percentages, and, you know, the percentages aren't quite as high as maybe you'd like there either. But it's going to be something that I think he's starting to lean a little bit more on. It's just when you look at, you know, even our passing offense, the worst version of our passing offense is still a little bit more effective than the best version of our rushing offense. And I think part of that is just the lack of speed and explosiveness at the running back position. Even if you're calling 35, 40 runs a game, you know, you're getting 120, 130 yards. The defense isn't worried about explosives. The defense isn't worried about giving up, you know, these long runs that we see these other teams, their running backs pull off, you know, 50, 60 yarders. That's just realistically not going to happen for us. So as much as I'd like to see the run game be utilized more, we're kind of at the point where the personnel isn't at the level that even if you run it 40 times a game, the defense isn't going to respect it. So a little bit stuck with what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's hard to overcome a lot of mistakes that we've seen with this team all year long without that so-called home run hitter, that game breaker at the running back position. Let's talk about it. Penalties. Man, I know you got to be frustrated as an offensive lineman seeing all these penalties thrown on the O-line.
Yeah, very frustrating. There's the pre-snap stuff that we've been working through the past, you know, 2, 3, 4 years now. Those are the most frustrating and irritating. Honestly, a little bit surprised they haven't, you know, gone towards more of repercussions for that. You know, I feel like if you do something long enough amount of time and you're allowed to do it without repercussions, then you're just going to keep kind of pushing that boundary. On the field, I mean, there's going to be guys that have holding calls. You know, a couple penalties here and there are going to look terrible, going to be bad calls. That's just kind of the state of NFL offensive line play and refereeing. But yeah, it's frustrating because this is a team that relies on long drives to score, to bleed clock. And so if you're only getting 8 or 9 drives a game and you've got 3 of those drives that have a false start or an illegal formation, you got 2 holding calls, those are huge negative plays, and typically you're not scoring points, or if you do, it's 3 at best. And so this offense, this team isn't really designed to overcome the penalties that the guys are making, and I think we're seeing that.
Yeah, in my opinion, they're not as good as they were in years past to overcome said penalties. Here's what head coach Andy Reid says about the penalties, and each week they're 1 or 2 plays away.
As far as the league goes, they give you an opportunity to express yourself. So, you know, that's what we do. And then, right or wrong, you hope either we can learn from it or they can learn from it and see where we're at. You know, so we can continue to coach the guys in the right direction.
And Coach Reed talking about his frustration with some of the penalty calls, and then there's not a whole lot of repercussions. He can gripe all he wants, but they're not going to change a play. So for the penalties, is it more of a physical thing, a mental thing, or a talent thing?
I think at this point it's got to be more of a mental thing, you know, especially with how often we've seen pre-snap penalties. That's extremely frustrating. You know, even on the physical side, you know, holding calls, you know, guys working and getting penalties. There's still an element of understanding the right technique of, you know, how to use your hands, when to release guys. You know, defensively, obviously with receivers being physical, it's a little bit hard when it feels like it's one-sided, but you gotta have to adjust if the refs are calling it a certain way. So there is, you know, probably more mental than physical. Still a lot of capable players, a lot of guys who know how to play good football, know how to not get penalties thrown against them. So when you see the volume of penalties this often throughout the course of the season, you have to change something yourself.
Yeah, penalties, in my opinion, the NFL officiating is a little worse last year or this year than it was previously in years past. I know they got a hard job. They're older guys chasing the best athletes in the world. But from the NFL officiating standpoint, what have you seen with penalties? Do you think they're worse?
It's hard not to say. You know, I've actually traditionally been a ref supporter, you know, quote unquote. I've always defended the refs with how difficult their job is. I do understand that. I was someone who was always interested in the rules and referees. You know, I'd say hi to the guys before games and talk to them throughout the games and ask questions. You know, I do think it's a really tough job. I mean, I've been frustrated. Everyone's been frustrated with referees as long as you go back. You can read articles from the 60s, from the 80s. State of refereeing is terrible. At some point, we have to accept that maybe it is that hard. Maybe it is really difficult. But the flip side is you're seeing situations where refs aren't getting rules correct, where they're calling things that really just have no business being called. I mean, the Kadarius Toney thing from a few years ago where the guy lines up right on the edge. The argument from our side was, hey, they usually warn us about that, and you can't call that penalty in the biggest moment without giving us a warning. So there's little things that are kind of, I hate to be unwritten rule guy, but things that you're used to that we're seeing just get thrown flags on now that typically haven't been. And then, yeah, when they're missing stuff, when they're getting intentional groundings wrong, when they're just completely misunderstanding some of the way offensive linemen with the snatch trap technique, they're calling a ton of holds on those, which are just not holding calls at all. It really does feel like officiating is getting a little bit worse. Yeah,
the inconsistency is the problem I have with it. So, all right, we'll talk more about officiating, and I'm sure you follow this man on Twitter. If you don't, you should. We'll tell you why when we return right here on this edition of Kansas City Huddle. Our Getting the Job Done moment of the week presented by KB Complete goes to Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes against the Cowboys in the fourth quarter. QB1 was able to keep his balance after tripping and stumbling and then delivered a rocket to Xavier Worthy for a 42-yard completion.
The job's not done until it's KB Complete.
Hey, welcome back to Kansas City Huddle. We're just talking about that Patrick Mahomes play there to Xavier Worthy. Your reaction when you watched that one?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, still doing incredible stuff pretty much every game, multiple times a game. It's just, it's fun to watch. It was fun to be a part of. Really makes you appreciate, you know, what he does, the competitiveness. You know, a lot of guys would throw something away or give up on a play, take a sack. But just the drive to keep plays alive, to make something happen, it's really special.
And you have the perspective that almost nobody else in the world has of watching him not only make those plays but grow. What have you seen about his professional development as a quarterback in the NFL?
It's been really cool to see. I mean, early on as offensive linemen, especially, you know, older guys, you take the onus on yourself to help the younger quarterback, to help make calls, to make things easier on him. So he's grown a lot in terms of taking over all those things, and, you know, calls in the run game, calls in the pass game, you know, fake calls, you know, audibles, all these different things that a quarterback's supposed to do. I mean, he handles everything and more. You know, I think he's got the most on his plate of any quarterback in the NFL. You see a lot of guys who are really good at the line of scrimmage, changing things. I mean, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, you know, some other guys that are pretty exceptional at that. And I know what Pat does, and I feel like he's got the most out of any of them. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
And I know you don't get to see plays like that that he made in the Cowboys game because obviously you're blocking for him. But when you go back on film, what goes through your mind when you see what he's able to accomplish?
Just pretty nuts that he is able to do that. I mean, one of the only ones I remember seeing, I think it was an Indy playoff game, maybe 2018, where he was falling off to the right and threw a crazy pass off balance. I think we might have scored a touchdown on it, or at least extended, a third down. And just how does he do that? Being sideways and completing a pass. And from my vantage point, I thought the ball was going to nosedive and hit the ground, but has just enough mustard on it to get the receiver for the completion. So yeah, it's just incredible to see that. I mean, when you're watching a guy and you see stuff happen that no one else really is doing, and especially on a consistent basis, and when coaches are stopping film and saying, hey, watch what the quarterback's doing on this play. I surely have never been anywhere else where coaches are stopping film to say, hey, watch the quarterback on this play. That just doesn't really happen.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's talk about some of the current offensive linemen, starting with Josh Simmons. I know he has a wrist injury going on right now, but what have you seen from the rookie?
A lot of development, a lot of growth. I think early in the season was trying to figure out exactly kind of his style. He kind of has a unique style. It's not something that many O-line coaches coach. I think he's maybe gone away from coaching a little bit and just kind of adapted what he does to the professional game, which I honestly love. I think if you're good at something, you should stick with it. Trying to change your technique throughout the course, especially of a rookie season as an offensive lineman, as a left tackle, is really difficult. My hope for him was that he could succeed using his technique this season and then start adding some more things throughout the course of his career, and he's done that really well. I mean, looks great as a pass protector. I think still a little room to grow in the run game, but anyone who's that explosive, moves that well, I think you can wish upon the run game pretty easily.
Kind of like golf swing. Don't change it mid-round, right?
No, yeah, unless you're Tiger, and then you can go through 8 different swing changes and be the best in the world every time.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of changes, we all saw what Kingsley Suamataia did. How tough a transition was that for him?
Yeah, it was a bit of a transition. I mean, I remember being there in training camp and watching him after practice, kind of going through stuff, just taking what looked like really simple pass sets and just moving and trying to figure out exactly what he was doing and just trying to get his eyes right for twists and for games. And early in the season, especially, first week or two, one rep against the Chargers, Khalil Mack, I remember in particular, but when he would lose, he would lose pretty quickly, which you don't want to do as an offensive lineman, obviously, but everything else was pretty good. And then we've seen this progression, I think, week 3, 4, 5, really came into his own, kind of eliminated the quick losses, really strong, really physical, moving guys in the run game, being firm in the interior of the pocket, which is what the Chiefs preach a lot. So he's having a great season. I mean, I think this is best case scenario.
And then the stalwarts, Trey and Creed, I mean, those guys are some of the best in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think with those guys, when you don't think about them, when you don't notice that they're out there, that's when you realize just how good they've been. And I mean, Creed's been that way his whole career. Trey's been that way. You still see some of the physical presence with Trey. I mean, even last game getting injured the way he did, but knocking guys around when he's in there. He fights through a lot of stuff. I mean, he is a physical player, which means you're going to have your fair share of ailments, and he fights through that as good as anybody.
And then Jawan Taylor, obviously we know the penalty issues, but what about his game do you like and maybe you'd like to see tweaked?
Yeah, I mean, tweaked, the pre-snap penalties need to be eliminated. There's no reason to have those. It's been, 3 or 4 years now. He came to us as a highly penalized guy, so that is part of his game, but I'm fine with holding calls, just the pre-snap stuff you can't do. He is a much better player, I think, when he's not making penalties than people realize. Pretty good pass protector, good enough in the run game. I do think he could stylistically, I mean, he does like to get off the ball. I was going to say early, and it's not early, but it seems early, and kind of get to a spot. I feel like a little bit more width on the pocket, setting a little bit more laterally as opposed to deep, kind of makes the pocket feel a little bit more comfortable for Pat.
All right, great analysis. We'll have more analysis with Mitch Schwartz coming up right after this on Kansas City Huddle. All right, welcome back to Kansas City Huddle. Former Chiefs wide receiver Garrett Dieter says they got to run the table if they want to get in. You think they have a chance?
Have a chance, yeah. I'm not the most optimistic at the moment, given what we've seen this year, but definitely have a chance.
All right, let's talk about your Chiefs memories. If you could pick one or two, I know you have a lot. What stands out for you?
Hard to not say the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That one's pretty easy. I still maintain that the AFC Championship game, post-game, was a better hour after the game than the Super Bowl. Being at Arrowhead,
Sure.
being at your home stadium, a lot more intimate setting with your family. It just was set up better for us, more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So that one always sticks out to me in terms of Yeah, winning the Super Bowl is great, and the post game's awesome. But like, we never got together as a full team in the locker room because there's the media tent, and you're getting pulled left and right, and all these people on the field. We're AFC Championship game, that post game memory, and then that whole run. I mean, the Week 17, New England losing and the stadium erupting right after Damian hits the long run. I mean, that's something that like almost never happens in all of sports, and the whole stadium erupts, and then we kind of realize what's going on and get excited. So, yeah, a lot of great memories from that run, and still look back fondly on it.
Yeah, something else that usually never happens is playing professionally alongside your brother Jeff. Y'all played against each other back in 2013. What do you remember from that game?
Yeah, he was here. I was in Cleveland. I think that was Coach Reed's first year. I remember we went to get some barbecue on Saturday before the game after we got into town. So I definitely remember that. Always food related. It was a close game. I remember we had a flea flicker we were supposed to run, and half the O-line ran one thing and half the line ran something else. We actually still completed it to Josh Gordon. I think he might have scored a touchdown. But I think we lost as in typical Cleveland fashion.
And a pretty cool stat with you and your brother. I believe you're the first Jewish brothers to play in the NFL in 100 years. I mean, how proud of you guys are of that?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I didn't know about that until we found the stat, and then you kind of put things in perspective, and you realize there's only a few brothers in the NFL at any given moment. There's actually more than you think once you got down the list. I mean, when we were playing, Barbers and Mannings and a lot of other ones that don't need to say, but it's cool to know that we carry that. I mean, there's not too many Jews in sports. You kind of, the joke is at some point you realize you're more likely to own an NFL team than you are to play for one. But to be two brothers doing it at the same time, I think it was first one since 1923. And then you go back to Jewish communities and you talk to kids and you see that, hey, there's so few role models they can look up to in professional sports and football especially. It really does mean a lot and puts it in perspective.
Great stuff. All right, audience questions, you ready? They've been writing furiously. Audience questions coming up when we come back. All right, welcome back. Audience question time. We got a special one right off the top for you, Mitchell Schwartz. I got this on Twitter from someone named Jeff Schwartz. You may or may not know who that is. It's his brother. Was my fried turkey the best you've ever had at Thanksgiving?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, once I put enough gravy on it, it definitely was. It was pretty good. He hypes up the fried turkey. It was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Okay.
It was very good. I'll give him credit.
All right, there you go. Well, all right, one of the audience questions here. Who was the toughest defensive player you had to go against while with the Chiefs?
I mean, I always think of Von Miller, having to face him twice a year, Khalil Mack. J.J. Watt in his prime was pretty tough as well. Bigger guy than those two, but yeah, unfortunately had to go against a lot of good players.
Yeah, you did a lot of times. Which Kansas City Chiefs position group is in the most dire need right now?
I'd say defensive line. I think getting after the quarterback. I mean, it's the name of the game. Protect the quarterback, get after the quarterback. We could use a little bit of help. All
right, it's got about 12 seconds here for this last one. How do you keep busy in retirement?
Being a dad, playing golf, cooking food, eating food, watch a little bit of sports and talk about it.
Sounds like the life, right? Well, thank you, sir, for coming. We appreciate your time as always. Thank you all for coming out, and thank you for watching Kansas City Huddle.